Welcome to the Lead at the Top of Your Game podcast, where we equipped you to more effectively lead your seat at any employer, business, or industry in which you choose to play. Each week, we help you sharpen your leadership acumen by cracking open the playbooks of dynamic leaders who are doing big things in their professional endeavors. And now your host, leadership tactics and organizational development expert, Karen Farrell Rhodes.
Hello, my superstars. This is Karen, and welcome to another episode of the Lead at the Top of Your Game podcast. We have a tremendous guest on the show today that I am super excited to talk about some of the lessons learned over his career. And he's had a very lengthy career, as you will learn in just a moment. So I'm sure there's a ton of nuggets that we need to make sure that we better understand. But we're pleased to welcome on the show today, Joe Davis. And Joe is a managing director and senior partner at the Boston Consulting Group, one of the most renowned management consulting firms across the globe. Now, Joe has been with BCG over 35 years. I believe it's closer to 37. He co-founded their Washington, D.C. office, and you know there's a lot of work in D.C. for them to do, as well as starting BCG's North America public sector business. In addition, Joe is the author of a book called The Generous Leader, where he shares numerous stories about the power of leaders who are intentionally human-centric. And just in my pre-conversations with Joe, I mean, I can just imagine, 50 million people at his feet listening to his stories because they are so engaging and always with the point that he's trying to bring on home. So I just know this episode is going to be fantastic. So welcome to the podcast, Joe.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for that very wonderful and kind introduction. That was very nice.
Absolutely. Well, I have a lot of questions and discussions I'd love to have with you, and I know we're on limited time. But before we go there, we always love to learn a little bit more about our guests on a personal level. So for just as much as you feel comfortable, would you mind sharing and giving us just a sneak peek of your life outside of work?
Outside of work. Okay. Well, I first have to say today's my birthday,
Yes,
which
I know. Happy
this will
birthday,
probably film at a different record and show at a different time. My birthday.
That's okay.
I always start here. I've been married 43 years. I have 4 children and 8
Amazing.
grandchildren and counting, and they are without question the absolute joy of my life. And it consumes. And I'm actually, after 37 years, you were right, leaving BCG, and my children clearly and grandchildren play a big part. The other things outside of work, I've always been a runner. I love to run. I almost, everyone, you say in work, everyone should have their de-stressors, and without question. My de-stressor is running. I also, maybe one little interesting thing, done the silent meditation retreats, the 10-day Vipassana. I've done 3 of them, which are...
Really? And you survived them? I think I went
I was
to
going to say, they're intense, but they're wonderful. When I came home with the first one, my wife said, if this is what you're going to be like, you can go every year. But I also said I might go to India and do a 30-day one. She goes, no, because you might not come home.
So that's right. You got to keep a happy home now, Joe. You know that.
Well, I might just stay there. But anyway, there you go.
Nice. Well, congratulations on just the beautiful family and making the decision to start your next chapter in life, too, after 37 years at BCG, even if it's just enjoying your family. But I'm sure a person like you are going to get a little bit antsy and probably do other things.
I will keep myself productively busy, I hope.
You will, I'm sure. Well, thank you so much for that sneak peek, Joe. We really appreciate it. And, now I'd love to kind of switch gears and have you start a little bit about, because you've been with BCG almost, I won't say your entire professional life, but a long portion of it. But can you share a little bit about your work there and maybe a couple of lessons learned you've learned in the consulting business, because it has really evolved over the years. Even me and my employers that I work with were probably primary clients of BCG overall. But can you give our listeners a sneak peek of what it's like to work there and what things you work on?
Okay, well, it's consulting. So, we work with large Fortune 500 type companies on tough issues that they want to solve. The job has evolved. I started BCG when we were an old-fashioned strategy consulting
Yeah.
firm, like the 8-week studies, and we left the deck behind, presentation. That's changed now massively. Now we try to stay with our clients and get the work done and help implement, and really be more deeply involved, which changed, therefore, what we had to do. Because it's one thing to come up with great insights.
Yeah.
You said you've been in Microsoft. It's another thing to then do those things inside an organization with
It
people.
is.
And, one lesson I could think of, I often tell, I learned it over the years and tell people who work for me over the years, you really want to make sure you're listening to folks, and we probably can talk about that, but you really want to engage. If you're really going to get something done, engage the skeptics, uncover the no's. And, you think about trying to drive change and somebody says, oh, no, that won't work. And everyone thinks they're the blockers. Actually, most of the time, they're not blockers. They know something you don't know about what it's going to take to do it, or it's something you're missing. And so I actually say, go find the people that think your idea is crazy and understand why. And then either make your idea better or convince them why it's okay. But usually they know something you don't, you need to
Right.
know, which I
That's
think
all.
is one very big lesson, even in life,
Yes.
understanding where someone else is coming from. Just think how things would be different if we all tried to do that a little bit more.
Absolutely. Boy, wouldn't things be a whole lot easier if we all were intentional
At
about
least
that?
tried. At least tried. You don't
At
have to
least
agree.
try.
Yeah, you don't have to agree.
Well, I know that you are also the author of the book, The Generous Leader. And, we go as deep as we can about tips and advice on leadership. And so, first of all, I'd love for you to share with the audience a little bit more about what drove you to write the book and maybe a couple of tips or insights that you wouldn't mind sharing with the listeners.
Yep. Okay. Well, I won't make sure this is not too long. As I finished leading, I led BCG North America, my last major role, and led it through COVID, which, as we all know, was quite an interesting time for all of
Yeah.
us, but for leaders too. And a lot of people said, you ought to write about your leadership style, what you learned during COVID. And it was funny. I started that book and shared it with one of the publishers, and they went like this. They said, nobody, by the time we get a book out, which takes a couple of years, as you know, no one
Right.
will want to read about COVID. So I shifted the book to be more about, leadership, interviewed a bunch of other leaders in a much longer frame. So
Right.
people suggested I write it, but there were some other reasons. I thought not bad to do something prior to retirement that may be useful post
Yeah.
retirement. But the real thing I thought is I want to throw my voice out there on, as you said, human centric or head, heart, on the fact that I think a leader has to be a good business person, has to be a good manager. But the more you can bring your heart and your humanity into your leadership, the more people are really going to be inspired and motivated, and the more obviously you get done.
Right.
A lot of people write, Brené Brown's written a lot of books. There's so many famous people, but a friend of mine said, Joe, if you move 8 people, it's worth the effort. Now, I hope I
Absolutely.
move more than 8. But so I thought, okay, I'm going
You
to.
need a bigger legacy than that, Joe. You
No,
got
I
too
know,
much
no, I know.
knowledge.
But it's interesting because you can get intimidated by people who write books who are very famous and sell millions of copies
Yeah.
and not put your voice out there. And I thought, okay, I'll talk to a different set of people than these other people did, and I'll try to move them.
Yes. That is awesome. And
I didn't go into insights. I'll let you. Sorry.
no, there's a ton I could ask, definitely. But I was reading up on your bio and some of the things that love to think about. And, you know, you always share that being a truly great leader is all about outcomes, but you still have to, really understand and be sensitive to people and their values and thoughts and beliefs to make that connection and to increase the level of trust so that you do get the best out of them and hopefully ultimately get, some fantastic outcomes. But a lot of, people say that, but I've seen a lot of companies where that culture does not live that out. They're still truly outcome driven. And in your experience, how do you best balance getting, if you're a leader, motivating your team and getting them to a great outcome while also being sensitive about the journey along the way?
Yeah. Okay. No, and where you started is right because you can be someone that leads with your heart and your humanity, but if you don't get outcomes, you don't stay in the job.
No,
That is
it
just
gets
a
you out.
fact. So, and sometimes I've been accused, well, Joe, you're just talking about the soft stuff. Yeah, but I'm still saying you get results,
Right.
And actually, what I believe, I think this is like a tagline, but I define a generous leader as one who gives of themselves freely without expectation of direct personal gain so that others can grow and develop and thrive at their full potential. And of course, as you just said, if you actually really get your people to thrive at their full potential, you do gain too. If that's your intention, it gets to be a little bit, insincere. But I actually believe it's critical to motivate, inspire people to their best. Now, I will say this, I'll take one thing that one of the things I talk about in there is giving, very clear feedback, but really recognizing a person's strength and what they need to work on. And a quick story: when I was younger, my first job was Procter and Gamble, and I was 25, or 26, whatever, three reps that were 40 years old. I was scared to death of these guys. Even though they were going to hurt me, but what did I know? I was a kid, and I used to
Right.
ride with them every 2 weeks and never give them feedback because I was just in awe. And
Yeah.
finally, it came time for year-end review, and I wrote down all the stuff they should work on according to the P&G manual and what I saw. And I started launched into this review with one of these fellows. His name was Rich. And about a minute in, he says, or 2 minutes, he says, "Wait a minute, Joe." He actually probably swore. "You ride with me every 2 weeks, and you never said any of this stuff?" I mean, you can bet. Yeah, right. I was just mortified. I just froze.
Right.
I don't remember but I got out of it and worked through it. And then when he left, we finished. My boss said, "Never again do you dare give feedback, written feedback, year in feedback where they haven't heard it along the way."
Of
So I
course.
actually
Yeah.
think, there's radical candor, Rachel Scott, this idea of giving very clear and direct feedback. Some people say, "Well, how do you reconcile that with being with the heart?" Well, actually,
Right.
I want you better. If I really want you to be better, I need to help you get better. And if I'm giving mushy feedback or doing what I did there, not saying anything all year, that's not helping someone be better. And if
Yeah.
I tell you directly, which, with it has to come from a place of caring, has to come a place from them wanting to be better, and it has to come with some work, which is you understand their strengths that they can leverage to work. If you don't do all that, you could do pieces, but that package is what makes it work. You can give very clear, direct feedback. One might say the opposite of from the heart, but
Right.
actually from the deepest heart. We all think about our best mentors, or if you had a good mentor, they were usually tough. If they weren't tough, were they really a good man? Because they want you to be great. And
That's
you think
right.
about,
They'll
oh my
push you
gosh,
out of
that
your comfort zone,
yeah, they
right?
push you out, and that's because they care about you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're not your mentor. I mean,
Or they
so
should be.
and then your point on the culture and organizations. I mean, it's just tricky because it's not, as somebody reminded me, we start when very young to be tough and blah 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 and all this and don't be vulnerable. Um, but I think if someone really sits back and says, "Okay, I want my team to be as great as they can be," and is not afraid, because a lot of people give mushy feedback just because they're afraid, they're scared, and now
Yeah.
they've hurt themselves and they've hurt the person, or they've hurt the person, which then hurts them because their person doesn't know it. So I think it's all wrong when someone says, "No, no, no, I got to be a tough guy and all that," and you lose in the end of the day. And actually, I interviewed a lot of CEOs for my book. None of them, they were clear on they have to drive results, but they really cared about the people and they knew that. I like to say the Jack Welch days, who was a very good manager, no question. But, his bottom 10% fired, Neutron Jack.
Yeah.
That model would not work with today's people. I don't
Oh,
think,
no.
you know?
It wouldn't. I don't think it would. You'd have to couch it differently and apply it differently, but
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I don't think it would work,
No, no,
as
you
it
can, well,
was.
I just
But
said you can still be pushing people to be their best, but you're
right.
actually supposed to be helping them to become their best, not just And Jack, I think, we don't want to go Jack Welch, but
Yeah.
I think, the other thing I think is different today is, I mean, work and life have blurred, that we all know that. So
Very much
now
so.
people
Yeah,
they have no choice but to bring their human self or want to bring their human self to work, and they expect to see it from you. And
that's
then
right.
depending on what industry you're in, people can change jobs and the best will change. So, sure, maybe a company can get away with the opposite of what I'm advocating, but I don't think they hold the best people for
No,
a
they
long time.
don't. They definitely don't. I would love, and I hope you don't mind me doing this, but I would love to spotlight one of your many roles at BCG. One of them being the chair of their Center for Inclusion and Equity committees, and being partner with the CEO. And I know it really impacted your outlook on leadership. Equity inclusion is such a charged term in
I know.
today's environment. And so I'm curious about learning a little bit more about, your role there, and how do you think we can the sentiment and then the importance of inclusion and equity alive in today's business environment?
Yeah. So, I mean, you did point out today, it's not even the business environment. I think it's the outside environment actually
Yeah,
forcing business people to not, most people believe what you and I can tell what you and I believe just by
yeah,
your question and my roles. Most people believe that. I mean, we talk to a lot of companies now, and they might have had to change some words depending on what state they live in, but they
right.
haven't changed their values,
The
actually.
sentiments, yes.
And I think there's two things when you say how. It's funny, my son finally read my book, and he called me and he said, Dad,
He finally read it.
well, it's 27, you know how it is. He said, I finally get it on this racial equity stuff because I do care very deeply. And he said, it's not just the right thing to do, it's actually good for business. I
It's
said, well, yes,
excellent for
yes, you dummy.
business.
Like, if it wasn't good for business, you can't make business people do it and let
That's
those
right.
that really care. And he said, yes, because I sell this stuff and I think some of my customers are probably black, a lot of that. I should understand where they're coming from a little bit. I said, well, that's
Right.
Andrew. Thank you. That's the point. So I do think you say,
Absolutely.
how can we? Those that just believe it's the right thing to do cannot back down, should not shut up, should keep pushing.
Yeah.
But we also have to know that it's good for business. I mean, we do a lot of work with government agencies and they need people. There ain't
Yeah.
enough white males, no offense, to
Yeah, they
serve
keep it
all
up.
the people. They need the, whatever you want to call it, the rainbow of North America.
That's
And so they
right.
understand we have to figure out how to be inclusive. We have to figure out how to hire people, we have to help them grow them. And, it's a funny thing because a few years ago, there were studies by BCG, by McKinsey, by the
There's a
investment
lot.
bank, even by the PE firms. I mean,
Gartner,
all
all of
these
them.
things saying
Yeah,
a diverse workforce gets to better answers.
that's
Diversity in the board yields better. So there's all now somehow no one's talking about that right now. I think we'll just have to get through this time.
I think
But
so
I
too.
think the real way to make it not go away is 2 points. It's still good for business in whatever fashion it is for your
Yes.
organization, and then something I believe is the right thing to do. But that's not enough. I know that. I
Right.
hate to say it, but I know it's not enough.
No, it's not. And these things come in cycles. I mean, you've probably seen them over the years. One minute it's a hot topic and the next it dies down for X, Y, and Z reasons. And I'm very hopeful that it will cycle back around very soon to once again being a safe topic to talk about. Because, like you said, it's the right thing for the business, it's the right thing for people.
Yeah.
And
Well,
we are more similar as people than different, and many of us have very similar values, and if we talk about it in a realistic way and connect our stories, it just makes sense. So when things generally make sense, it really sometimes comes to pass after a while, a lot of times.
yeah. No, it has to rebalance. I mean, as you said, I mean, someone reminded me when Martin Luther King was killed, there was a lot of energy and the energy dissipated, and
Yeah.
then something else. And of course, George Floyd, now, unfortunately, it's dissipated and it's getting attacked. But
Yeah.
that will, I just believe, betterment of humans, that will balance out. But the thing that's important is those people that care can't
Stay the
stop
course and
pushing.
reemphasize it.
And speaking too, I was at an event recently and they were just talking about how, a lot of executives and business people are shutting up. And that's not helpful. If your values
No,
haven't changed, now I know this is not as easy to do as I say, but if your values haven't changed, find the way to live and express those values publicly. If you're in a
that's
role that, you can.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also important to meet people where they are as well and connect them, because there's something, and maybe I'm just a true optimist, but there's always something or red thread around of our values in general that we can connect to and talk in terms of that, and then expand the conversations as you build more and more trust with people. But you're right, for those in a corporate setting or governmental setting or things they're being true leaders, true visible leaders where their words are really making an impact and difference, they've got to stand up and be courageous about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
But
know,
that's just Karen's 2 cents.
no, well, I agree with you. No, you'd also just said something about understanding where others are coming from. And
Yeah,
that goes both ways. I shouldn't say this, but I'm
absolutely.
going to. It's about me. But I built the North America team and put a lot of women and people of color in places so they have a chance to grow into leadership roles.
Yeah.
Someone called me, white male called me and said, well, Joe, does this mean I get a chance? I said,
No,
yeah, but it's just going to be more balanced. And so when it's balanced, you have as much a chance as they did, and actually
right.
they had, it wasn't, I don't want to, I want to be careful what I say, but
Yeah, I got
is,
you.
yeah, you have a chance, but so do all these other people. So,
That's right.
I did a podcast once and the first person from Australia is from Australia, drilling me. He was drilling me on diversity and equity. And he said, well, all you people, here's what he said, please, all you woke people care about is equal outcomes. That was insightful to me. I said, what are you talking about? We care about equal opportunity. You got to have a chance.
Right.
You know, like the best ally, I've been told, doesn't, they open the door for the person to walk through. The person has to perform. If they
That's
fail, they
right.
fail. Now you coach them like you're, and this is not about equal outcomes, about equal opportunity to deliver those outcomes. If you fail, you fail. That's the deal. That's life. Now coach them, support them. But it was
Yeah,
really telling. I thought, wow, if that's what you think, no wonder we're in a different place.
that's right. They're a whole different place.
I don't believe that either. I believe, yeah, anyway, equal chance.
So, Joe, if you had to leave our audience with just three main points that you want them to remember out of this podcast, and you could have said it before or you might be new, but think of three main points or tips or nuggets that you would love for them to remember. What would those three be?
Yeah, okay. Let's see. I think I'll go in this order. First off, I just think it's essential in life to listen, to learn, I'll say, generous, really listening to what, and not just hear the words you're saying to me, Karen, but why is she saying this? What's she thinking? What's she mean? And ask if you don't know. It's just so critical that we listen to each other. And if you're a leader, you really have to, or a consultant or a business person, if you're coach of a soccer team, you got to listen to your kids if there's something off. So I think, and by that, I mean, where are they coming from? What are they saying? That's number one. I do think another thing tied to that I would say is, as best you can, try to understand the other person's lived experience and where they're coming
Good
from.
point.
What's their background? You don't have to go study it and know it. You can't, and don't pretend you do know it. That really infuriates
I
everybody.
know.
But try to, and what is their perspective? And then the third thing I'd say, which we didn't talk about much, but you want people to follow you. You have to be you have to be real or authentic or whatever. And if you're perfect, nobody follows a perfect person. Well,
I've
yeah,
never met a perfect person, so
yeah, I
if
know.
you
I'm trying to think
find
if we're
them,
getting.
let me know.
So you have to be your authentic self, and to be authentic, you have to share a little bit of vulnerability or whatever word you want it to be. I'm not saying you have to cry in front of 300 people, but
Yeah,
do you have time for a quick story on this vulnerability?
absolutely.
You can even
Please.
just say, I don't know. I had a colleague, I asked him about when does he, where he feels vulnerable. And he said, well, if I'm with a team and they are getting stuck and I can tell they're going to ask me what I think they should do and I don't know, he said, before I say I don't know, I will leave the room. Now, how productive is that? I mean,
Not at all.
and he said, so one time, but he was afraid to admit he didn't know. That way he didn't want to be the vulnerable. As a leader, I got to have the answers, got to know everything.
No, you don't.
And he said, so he said, one time I stayed in, I said, well, I don't know either. And he says, like this burst of energy came into the room. New ideas were generated. Well, if you
Yeah,
don't know, I don't know. It's
that's
just a classic example of when the leader or the boss or whatever, when we share our own uncertainty and our own fears, you release others from their fear. They say, oh, well, they're scared too. Okay, I can be scared. Or they're lost. I can be lost. And I can talk about being lost. And now you can start to get more done because you
that's right.
remove roadblocks. So that'd be my three. Listen, really listen to learn. It's so essential.
Yes,
Number two, as best you can, try to understand where they're coming from, their quote unquote lived experience. And you've got to share some of yourself if you want to lead people, if you want them to
absolutely.
follow you. Those are my three nuggets. I
And
had to pick
I wrote
three.
they are a fantastic three. I wrote them down in my little notebook so I could make sure our copy editors included in the show notes because I want to make sure those three are captured. And
Thank
I
you.
absolutely love the stories behind them, and I wholeheartedly agree. So I high five you through
Yeah.
through our video. Well, it's been amazing, but I cannot let you get out of here without asking you our signature question that we ask all of our guests. And for my new listeners out there, a few years back, I commissioned a research study on some of the most important traits or tactics of high potential and high performing leaders. And out of that came 7 buckets, tactics that we documented. And we always ask our guests on the podcast, which of the 7 most resonated with you? Because all 7 are equally as important. All 7 apply no matter what industry or career stage you're in. You just use them at different times and in different ways. So Joe was so kind to share that courageous agility really resonated with him. And that is all about having the courage and the fortitude to, stand up for what you believe in, but still take calculated risks to move the effort or initiative forward, even if you're uncertain of what the future may bring. It's all about taking baby steps, even in the midst of fog when you're not quite sure. So, Joe, curious minds want to know why courageous agility really popped for you.
Yeah, it's funny. 'Cause I think a couple of things, if I thought about my leadership over the years. I mean, one, clearly what you just said ties to this whole idea of being a little bit vulnerable.
Yes.
Okay, well, let me take a chance and expose that I'm a little lost too, or I don't know. And, that'll help us all move forward. So, when I hear that term, that's one thing. The other thing big believer in is if you're, as a leader, you have to make decisions. That's your job, right? But,
Yes.
and some people make them stubbornly, maybe not with full data. And then if they're wrong, they stick to it. So when I hear the word agility, I'll say, because people say to me, oh, you might make a decision, and then new data comes and you're wrong, you just change your mind. I said, well,
Yeah, but we
I,
said make
yeah,
calculated risks,
yeah.
and
So yeah,
calculated risk is taking that data and making
yeah.
the best
So you
decision you
make the
can
decision,
out
right?
of
You
it.
make the thing you can at the moment, but the important point is if you're off, just be vulnerable enough to move and
That's right.
change. And that's where you get in trouble if you don't have, as you call courageous agility. If you say, no, I made the call, I know the answer, you get stuck, or something gets stuck, or people get hurt. So I just thought, that's what resonates with me is take a chance, get what you can, take a chance, make a decision. If new stuff comes in, be agile and change your mind. I mean,
That's right.
whatever.
And I'd love to remind our audience that just because you're leading, and you can lead at any level, career stage that you're in, as Joe mentioned, it's not all about you being the only one to make the final decision. Leading is all about leading conversations with your colleagues and teams as well to get to some great options
Yeah.
for you all jointly to kind of make a decision. Now that maybe the final check off or okay or stamp of approval may come with you. And you've got to own that and, carry it up through the leadership chain. But I love what you say, Joe, about, just being open up and being vulnerable, because it gives people the permission to chip in and help. And they find so much happiness about being part of the
When you're
process
included, yeah. No, I know.
and giving buy-in. Yeah.
I was listening to a leader once say that your job, if you walk in the room, is not to come up with the best answer in the room. Your
Yeah.
job is to come out of the room with the best answer. So to your point,
There you go.
the best answer comes from the room. It doesn't come from you.
That's right. I always share this. The knowledge is in the room with the
Yes.
folks. You're just facilitating the conversation.
But then it goes back to a lot of things. You got to listen to them, really, etc.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Joe, we're going to have a ton of information about you and your background in our show notes. But I always love to give our guests airtime to share where they can find out more about you or connect with you if desired. So, is there a desired place or website? Is it LinkedIn
Well,
or
you just said
not
the best.
BCG because you're out of there
Now,
soon?
BCG, you can find me. But that's not going to work. No, I think LinkedIn, to your point, is the easiest. And since I wrote this book, I've become a more active user. That's that, and I do have a website, joedavis.com. But if someone really wanted to connect, the message thing on LinkedIn there, I will read them and I'll respond.
There you go.
I like to. Yeah.
All right, listeners, well, you'll know how to find Joe. If you don't remember, just check out the show notes. We'll have that link there. And I'm sure he'll be happy to respond and help you in any way he can. But thank you so much, Joe, for the gift of your time today. It has been fantastic.
Thank you, Karen. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. And thank you to listeners for the gift of your time. Because as I always say, there are literally millions of other podcasts out there, and we do not take your patronage lightly. All that we ask is that you like and subscribe to the show and to share the show with just one friend, because by doing so, we can all get smarter about leading at the top of our game. Thank you so much, and see you next week. And that's our show for today. Thank you for listening to the Lead at the Top of Your Game podcast, where we help you lead your seat at any employer, business, or industry in which you choose to play. You can check out the show notes, additional episodes, bonus resources, and also submit guest recommendations on our website at leadyourgamepodcast.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn by searching for the name Karen Rhodes, with Karen being spelled Karan. And if you like the show, the greatest gift you can give would be to subscribe and leave a rating on your podcast platform of choice. This podcast has been a production of Shockingly Different Leadership, a global consultancy which helps organizations execute their people, talent development, and organizational effectiveness initiatives on an on-demand project or contract basis. Huge thanks to our production and editing team for a job well done. Goodbye for now.